Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. Listen, I need to tell you something. Something that might sound ridiculous at first. But before you click away, before you dismiss this as just another story, let me ask you one thing. Have you checked your house's shadow lately? Really checked it? Because mine falls in the wrong direction. And once you notice something like that, once you really see it, everything changes, everything. So stick around, get comfortable, maybe grab a blanket, turn off the lights if you dare, because what I'm about to tell you, it started so simply, so innocently, just like your day probably started. Normal, routine, safe. But shadows don't lie. The story begins now. The first time I noticed it was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were trash days in our neighborhood, and I was dragging the bins to the curb when I saw it. The sun was setting behind me, casting long shadows across the freshly mowed lawns of Maple Street. Every house threw its shadow eastward. Every single one, except mine. My shadow pointed west. I stood there for a moment, garbage bag still in hand, staring at the impossible geometry laid out before me. Mrs. Henderson's colonial next door cast its shadow properly. The Johnson's ranch style across the street, same thing. But my little two-story craftsman, it defied the laws of physics. Must be tired, I muttered to myself. Working those late shifts at the hospital had been getting to me. 12-hour days in the ER, they mess with your head, make you see things that aren't there. But the next morning, coffee in hand, standing on my porch, I checked again. The sun rose in the east, just like it always had. And my house's shadow, it pointed east, too, towards the rising sun. Impossible. I called in sick that day. First time in 3 years. The thing about shadows is we trust them. They're constant, predictable. When you're a kid learning to tell time with a sundial in science class, when you're finding your way using the sun's position, shadows are truth. They don't lie, they can't lie. So what happens when they do? I spent that morning walking around my house, studying it from every angle. The shadow never behaved correctly. When the sun was overhead at noon, my house cast shadows in all directions, like there were multiple suns in the sky, but there was only one. I checked, stared right at it until my eyes watered. "You feeling all right, hun?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mrs. Henderson stood at the property line, watering her petunias, watching me with that concerned look neighbors get when they think you might be having a breakdown. "Fine, Mrs. H, just checking the gutters." She nodded slowly. The way you nod at someone you're not quite sure about anymore. "If you need anything." "I'm good, thanks." But I wasn't good, not even close. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw shadows bending in impossible ways. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I Googled it. House shadow wrong direction. Nothing useful. Shadow anomaly. Just stuff about eclipses. My house breaks physics. Obviously nothing. Then, buried on page 17 of results, I found a forum post, no replies. Posted 7 years ago by someone called Truth in Shadows 44. My house's shadow falls the wrong way. Started 3 weeks ago, nobody else notices. I've tried telling people, but they look at me like I'm crazy. It's getting worse. The shadows are moving when I'm not looking. If anyone else is experiencing this, please respond. Please. The account had been deleted. I created an account, tried to message them, but the username no longer existed. I posted my own thread. Anyone else experiencing shadow anomalies with their house? Within minutes, my post was removed. Violation of community guidelines, it said. But I hadn't violated anything. I just asked a question. That's when the fear really started to set in. Not the dramatic, heart-pounding kind, but the slow, creeping type that settles in your bones. The kind that makes you check your locks twice before bed. Makes you leave lights on in every room. Because if shadows could lie, what else was lying to me? The next few days blurred together. I went back to work. Tried to focus on patients. On charts. On anything but the wrongness waiting for me at home. But between emergency calls, I'd find myself sketching diagrams on prescription pads. Sun positions. Shadow angles. Trying to make sense of the impossible. Dr. Martinez found me in the break room one afternoon, surrounded by crumpled papers covered in my frantic calculations. "Everything okay, Sarah?" I looked up at him, considered telling him everything, then thought better of it. "Just tired, you know how it is." He did that same slow nod Mrs. Henderson had done, that careful nod people give when they're cataloging your behavior for later discussion. After that, I kept my observations to myself. But the shadows, they were getting bolder. It started small. I'd catch movement in my peripheral vision, a shadow sliding across the wall when nothing had moved to cast it. The shadow of my kitchen table would be under the window one moment, by the door the next, though the table never budged. I set up cameras, cheap ones from the electronics store downtown, pointed them at the walls, at the floors, anywhere shadows fell. I'd review the footage each night, frame by frame. Nothing. The shadows never moved on camera, only when I was watching with my own eyes. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie in bed, watching the streetlight cast tree shadows on my bedroom wall. Normal shadows, behaving shadows, but the moment I'd start to drift off, they'd shift, reach, stretch toward me like fingers. I'd snap awake, heart racing, the shadows back in place, innocent. Still. By the second week, I'd lost 12 pounds. My scrubs hung loose. My hands shook during procedures. The hospital administration suggested I take some personal time. Strongly suggested. So I found myself with nothing but time, and a house full of lying shadows. That's when I started measuring. Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., I'd place markers where the shadows fell. Little pieces of tape on the floor. By 7:15, the shadows had moved, but not in the way they should have. Not following the sun's path. They moved like they were avoiding something, flowing around invisible obstacles. I mapped it all, created a whole system. Blue tape for morning shadows, red for afternoon, green for evening. My floors looked like some demented game board. The pattern that emerged made no sense. The shadows were moving in spirals, converging on certain spots, then fleeing from others. And at the center of it all, right in the middle of my living room, was a space where no shadow ever fell. A perfect circle, about 3 feet in diameter. I stood in that circle one evening, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, but the absence of shadow there felt wrong, like standing in a void, like the light itself was avoiding that spot. That night, I heard the whispers. Not words exactly, more like the memory of words. The echo of conversations that hadn't happened yet, or had happened long ago. They came from the shadowless circle, soft, insistent, just at the edge of comprehension. I grabbed my phone, tried to record them, but the playback was only silence. The whispers only existed in the moment, only for me. By week 3, I'd stopped leaving the house entirely. Groceries delivered, bills on autopay. I told everyone I had the flu, something contagious, keep away, because I'd started to notice something else, something worse than wrong shadows or phantom whispers. The shadows were teaching me things, not in words or images, but in understanding. Each impossible angle showed me how limited my perception had been. Each wrong direction revealed a truth I'd never considered. Reality wasn't what I thought it was, had never been. The shadows weren't falling wrong. They were falling correctly, according to rules I'd never known existed. Rules that had always been there. hiding just beyond the edge of normal observation. And once you see those rules, once you understand them, you can't unsee them. Can't go back to the comfortable lie of ordinary physics. The forum post I'd found. Truth in Shadows, 44. They'd known, they'd tried to warn others, and they'd been silenced, deleted, erased, but their shadows probably still remembered. I need you to understand something. When reality starts to crack, it doesn't shatter all at once. It's more like when you notice a tiny chip in your windshield. At first, it's just an annoyance. You tell yourself you'll fix it later. But the crack spreads, slowly, inevitably, until one day you're driving down the highway and the whole thing spiders out, and suddenly you can't see the road anymore. That's what happened with the shadows. By the fourth week, they weren't just falling in wrong directions. They were falling from things that weren't there. I'd walk into my kitchen and see the shadow of a chandelier on the floor. But I didn't own a chandelier, never had. I'd check the ceiling. Nothing but the simple flush mount light I'd installed when I moved in 3 years ago, but the shadow remained. Ornate. Crystal. Swaying slightly as if disturbed by a breeze that didn't exist. Then there were the people. Shadow people. Not the urban legend kind. These were different. These were shadows of actual people. But people who weren't in my house. I'd see a man's shadow pass by the living room wall. Tall, wearing what looked like a hat, but I lived alone. Had always lived alone. A child's shadow played in the corner of my bedroom. Small hands making shadow puppets on the wall. But there was no child. No hands. Just the shadows of them. Acting out scenes from lives that weren't being lived. Not here, not now. I stopped trying to rationalize it. Stopped trying to find logical explanations, because logic had left the building the moment my house's shadow decided to fall upward. Yes, upward. That started in week 5. I woke one morning to find my house casting its shadow on the sky, a dark outline against the clouds, as if the earth and heavens had switched places. But only for my house. Only in my reality. The neighbors didn't notice. How could they? Their shadows still obeyed the old rules, the comfortable rules, the lies we all agreed to believe. But the whispers from the shadowless circle, they were getting clearer, not louder, clearer, like tuning into a distant radio station. Still, not quite words, but concepts, ideas, truths that human language hadn't developed words for. They told me about the spaces between, the gaps in reality where lost things go, where shadows flee when the lights turn on, where echoes live after the sound dies. My house, it had slipped into one of those gaps. Not completely, just enough to catch the light from other angles, other whens, other wheres. The shadows I was seeing, they were real. Just not real here, not real now. They were bleeding through from adjacent possibilities. Other versions of this house. Other lives that could have been lived within these walls. The man in the hat, he'd lived here in the 40s. Died in the war. But in another thread of possibility he'd come home. Raised a family. His shadow still walked these halls in that other world. The child making shadow puppets. She could have been mine. Would have been if I'd made different choices. If I'd said yes instead of no that night 10 years ago. Her shadow played in the bedroom that could have been her nursery. Every shadow told a story. Every impossible angle revealed another path not taken. And the shadowless circle, that was the anchor. The point where all possibilities converged, where all shadows met and canceled each other out. The eye of a reality storm I couldn't see but could feel in my bones. I started sleeping in that circle, dragging my mattress into the living room, positioning it exactly in the center of the void. It was the only place the shadows couldn't reach, the only place I felt not safe exactly. But stable, present, real. But even that wouldn't last. because the shadows were getting hungrier. I'm running out of time to tell you this. The shadows, they know I'm talking about them. They don't like being observed, being documented. They prefer to work in the spaces where nobody's looking, in the corners of your vision, in the moments between moments. But someone needs to know, in case I join Truth and Shadows 44, in case I get deleted too. It was a Thursday when everything changed. 6 weeks after I first noticed the wrongness. I woke in my circle, my safe space, to find shadows converging on me from all directions. Not cast by anything, just shadows, pure absence of light, moving with purpose. They stopped at the edge of the circle, bunching up against the invisible barrier like water against a dam, and in their darkness, I saw them clearly for the first time. The shadows weren't empty, they were full of all the things that never were, all the possibilities that died unborn, all the paths untaken, and they were tired of being shadows, tired of being echoes of might-have-beens. They wanted to be real. The whispers became screams, not of pain, but of frustration, of denied existence. They pressed against the circle's edge, testing it, probing for weakness, and they found it. It wasn't in the barrier itself. It was in me. Because I'd been watching them for so long, thinking about them so constantly, that I'd started to sympathize, to understand their hunger, their need. What right did I have to this reality, this solid, singular existence? I, who had noticed the shadows, seen through the comfortable lies. Why should I get to stay anchored when they had to drift? The moment that doubt crept in, the circle cracked. Not visibly, but I felt it. Like a tooth going bad, a foundation shifting. The shadows felt it too. They pulled back, gathered themselves, and then rushed forward as one. The circle held, barely, but I knew it wouldn't last another assault. That's when I understood what needed to happen. What Truth in Shadows 44 had probably understood too late. The shadows weren't the problem. The seeing was. Once you notice the wrongness, once you really see it, you create a connection, a bridge between what is and what could be. And that bridge goes both ways. Isa, the shadows, had shown me truth. But truth isn't always survivable. Sometimes the lies are all that keep us stable. Keep us here, keep us real. I had a choice. I could close my eyes, pretend I'd never seen, move out, sell the house, let someone else eventually notice the wrong falling shadows. Someone else could become the bridge. Or I could finish what I'd started. Step out of the circle. Let the shadows have what they wanted. Become part of the wrongness instead of just observing it. I stood up. The shadows pulled back, waiting, hoping, hungry. One step, that's all it would take. One step outside the circle and I'd join them. Become another possibility, another might have been. My shadow would fall in all directions, in no directions, freed from the tyranny of singular existence. But then I thought about you, the person listening to this, the one who might notice their own shadows acting strange, who might see the wrongness starting, and I realized there was a third option. I'm still in the circle as I tell you this, still safe in my small island of reality, but I won't be here much longer. Because I figured out how to break the connection without feeding the shadows, how to unsee what I've seen. It's simple, really. So simple I should have thought of it weeks ago. I just have to make sure I'm never alone with the shadows again, never have a chance to observe them, never have a moment to doubt. Tomorrow, I'm going to fill this house with light, every corner, every space, lights that never turn off, mirrors to reflect and multiply the brightness, no shadows anywhere, ever. And then I'm going to forget, deliberately, purposefully. I'm going to drown myself in distraction, in noise, in other people's problems. I'm going back to work, back to life, back to the comfortable lies. The shadows will still fall wrong, but I won't see them, won't look, won't know, and maybe that will be enough. But here's the thing. The reason I needed to tell you this story, the reason you needed to hear it, because now you know. Now you'll look. Now you'll check your own shadows. You won't be able to help yourself. Human curiosity is stronger than human caution. And when you see it, if you see it, that first impossible angle, that first wrong direction, remember this: the shadows aren't lying. We are. We always have been. Pretending light travels in straight lines. Pretending physics is simple. Pretending reality is singular. The shadows know better. They've always known. And now, so do you. Before you go, before you dismiss this as just a story, do me one favor. Just one. Go to your window right now. Look at your house's shadow. Really look at it. Check which way it's falling. Check if it matches your neighbor's. And if it doesn't, if you see that impossible angle, that wrong direction, leave a comment. Tell me I'm not alone. Tell me you see it too. Because the truth is, I never made it out of the circle. I'm still here, still watching, still waiting. And these shadows, they're getting smarter, learning, adapting. They know about the internet now, about stories, about how ideas spread. This isn't just my story anymore, it's yours. Check your shadows, check them now. And whatever you do, whatever you see, don't look away. The shadows are counting on it. You see, I thought I was being clever, thought I'd found the solution. Fill the house with light, drown out the shadows. Forget what I'd seen. But shadows, they're patient. They've existed since the first light source cast the first darkness. They know how to wait. It's been 3 days since I wrote the above. 3 days of every light in my house blazing 24/7. My electric bill will be astronomical, but that's the least of my problems. Because the shadows found a way. They're using my body now. It started yesterday morning. I was brushing my teeth. All the lights on. No shadows anywhere. When I saw it in the mirror, my reflection cast a shadow inside the mirror. A shadow that shouldn't exist because the light inside a reflection isn't real light. It can't cast real shadows. But there it was. Dark. Distinct. And it wasn't copying my movements. When I raised my hand, the shadow in the mirror lowered its. When I stepped left, it stepped right. Mirror opposite of a mirror image. A double negative that somehow didn't equal a positive. I smashed the mirror. Had to. The shadow was reaching for the glass from the inside, trying to push through. But breaking it was a mistake. Because now that shadow had no reflection to bind it. It's loose in my house somewhere. I catch glimpses of it, sliding under doors, pooling in the corners where even my blazing lights can't quite reach. And it's not alone. Every reflective surface in my house has become a gateway. The windows, the TV screen, the stainless steel refrigerator, even the surface of water in a glass. Each one shows shadows that shouldn't be there. Shadows of me doing things I'm not doing. Living lives I'm not living. In the kitchen window, I see my shadow cooking elaborate meals. I live on takeout and frozen dinners. But that shadow knows its way around a kitchen. Knows recipes I've never learned. Uses spices I don't own. In the bathroom, the shadow in the medicine cabinet mirror takes pills I don't recognize. Counts them carefully. Takes 2 blue ones, 3 white ones. Saves the red ones for later. I don't know what they're for, but the shadow does. The shadow needs them. The worst is the shadow in my laptop screen. That one is typing. Writing stories I didn't write. Sending emails I didn't send, and having conversations in chat windows with people I don't know, living an entire digital life parallel to mine. I tried covering all the reflective surfaces, towels over mirrors, curtains drawn, electronics unplugged, but the shadows don't need the reflections anymore. They just used them to cross over. Now they're here, in my brightly lit, shadowless house, existing without being cast, living without a source. And they're getting stronger. This morning, I woke up in the kitchen, standing at the stove, cooking something I didn't recognize. My hands moving with practiced precision, but I wasn't controlling them. The cooking shadow had borrowed my body, used me to make its recipes real. The food smelled amazing, complex, sophisticated. Nothing like anything I could make. I threw it all away, had to. Eating shadow food, that seemed like a line I shouldn't cross. A boundary that, once broken, couldn't be repaired. But I was hungry, so hungry. And the shadow, it kept cooking. Every time I left the kitchen, I'd find myself back there, hands moving, ingredients appearing, dishes I couldn't name taking shape. The pill-taking shadow wants its turn too. I keep finding myself in the bathroom and reaching for medicine that isn't there, feeling withdrawal from drugs I've never taken, craving relief from pain I don't have. And the typing shadow, that one's the most insistent. I'll sit down to send a work email and find myself writing other things. Stories about shadow worlds, about places where light falls up and darkness rises, about people who learn to live between realities. I delete them, but they come back. The shadow remembers what I tried to forget. Here's what I think happened. When I flooded my house with light, I didn't eliminate the shadows. I just compressed them, condensed them, forced them to evolve. Like bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics, the shadows adapted to survive in constant brightness, and in adapting, they became something new, something that doesn't need darkness to exist, something that can cast itself without light. Independent shadows, self-sustaining, self-aware, the other versions of me, the ones living different lives and different possibilities. Their shadows all converged here, in this oversaturated brightness, in this place where I tried to deny their existence. They want their chance, their turn, their moment in the real. I can feel them queuing up, each shadow waiting patiently for its time in my body. The musician shadow that knows how to play piano. The athlete shadow that runs marathons. The parent shadow that rocks invisible children to sleep. All the me's I could have been. Should have been. Would have been if I'd made different choices. They're not evil. That's the thing that makes this so hard. They're just unfulfilled, denied. And they found a loophole, a way to taste reality through me. But I'm running out of me to share. Each time a shadow takes control, I lose a piece of myself. A memory, a skill, a preference. The cooking shadow took my taste for simple foods. Now, everything bland disgusts me. The pill shadow took my fear of medication. Now I crave chemicals I can't name. The typing shadow, it's taking my words, my way of expressing myself. I can feel my vocabulary changing, my sentence structure shifting. These aren't entirely my thoughts anymore. They're filtered through shadow consciousness, translated from possibility to actuality. Soon, I won't be me at all. Just a body, a vessel, a collection of meat and bones for shadows to animate. And the worst part of me is okay with that, because I've seen how they live, these shadow selves. They're not limited by single choices, single timelines. They exist in the spaces between moments, experience all possibilities simultaneously. The cooking shadow doesn't just know one recipe. It knows every recipe I could have learned, every meal I might have mastered. It can taste ingredients that don't exist in this reality but could have. The typing shadow doesn't just write stories. It writes every story. All the variations, all the endings, all the words and all the orders they could ever be arranged. They're more complete than I am, more real in their unreality. Maybe that's why the house's shadow fell wrong in the first place. Maybe it was trying to show me, trying to wake me up to the limitation of singular existence. We think we're so solid, so definite, but we're just one thread in an infinite weave, one note in an endless symphony, one shadow cast by lights we can't see. The shadows know this, have always known, and now they're teaching me. Yesterday, I tried to leave, packed a bag, headed for the door, but I couldn't cross the threshold, because my shadow, my real shadow, the one that should obey the laws of physics, it wouldn't come with me. It stayed in the house, anchored to the floor. And without it, I couldn't leave. Can't exist in the outside world without casting a shadow. That's the rule. The one rule that even possibility can't break. So I'm trapped. In this bright prison. With shadows that aren't mine, but are. With lives I didn't live, but did. With choices I didn't make, but remember making. And you're trapped too. The moment you started listening. The moment you began wondering about your own shadows. You created a connection, a bridge. Check your reflections tonight. Check them carefully. Is your shadow doing exactly what you're doing? Or is there a slight delay, a subtle difference? A life being lived in parallel just beyond the glass? Because once the shadows know you can see them, really see them, they'll want their turn, their chance, their moment in the real. And trust me, they've been waiting so very long. The lights in my house are starting to flicker. Even eternal brightness has its limits. And when they finally go out, when darkness returns, I don't know if what emerges will be me or them, or maybe there was never a difference. Maybe we were always shadows, pretending to be solid. Check your shadows before they check you. Story number 2. Listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you might save your life one day. Or, at the very least, it'll explain why I haven't driven on Interstate 89 for the past 6 months. My name is Marcus, and I worked, as a night shift trucker. 23 years on the road, 23 years of empty highways, bad coffee, and AM radio static. I've seen things that would make your skin crawl. Hitchhikers who vanish between one glance and the next. Rest stops where the bathrooms echo with sounds that don't belong to any living thing. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened at Toll Booth 13. You probably think you know every toll booth on your regular routes, right? Wrong. Toll Booth 13 isn't on any map. It doesn't show up on GPS. The State Transportation Department has no record of it. But it's there, waiting, between mile markers 47 and 48 on Interstate 89 just past the Vermont border. And whatever you do, whatever happens, if you find yourself approaching that booth on a foggy October night, don't look back, not even once. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened that night. Let me tell you why I sold my rig, why I wake up at 3:17 a.m. every single night in a cold sweat, and why the sound of coins dropping still makes my hands shake. Before we begin, I have one question for you. Have you ever noticed how some roads feel different at night? How the familiar becomes foreign? How the darkness seems to press against your windshield like it's trying to get in? Good. Then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand. The story begins now. October 15th, 11:47 p.m. I remember checking my watch because I was running late on a delivery to Burlington. 800 miles of frozen fish in the back, and the refrigeration unit had been acting up since Ohio. The fog rolled in somewhere around exit 22, thick as cotton, the kind that makes your headlights look like two pale fingers reaching into nothing. I'd driven this route maybe, 200 times? More? The road was like an old friend. Every pothole, every curve, every mile marker was mapped in my mind. That's why when I saw the sign, Toll Booth, 1 mile, my foot came off the accelerator. There was no toll booth on this stretch of 89, never had been. The green reflective sign caught my high beams, clear as day. Official Department of Transportation font and everything. My first thought was, okay, they must have just built it. Budget cuts, infrastructure bills, whatever. States are always looking for new ways to squeeze money out of truckers. But something felt off. The fog got thicker. My CB radio, which had been crackling with the usual late-night chatter, went silent. Not static, not interference, just nothing. Like someone had pulled the plug on the entire world. I slowed to 40, then 30. The white lines on the road seemed to writhe in the fog, and I had to blink hard to keep them straight. That's when I saw the lights. Amber. Pulsing. Like a heartbeat. The toll booth materialized out of the fog like a ship emerging from deep water. It stretched across all 4 lanes. Old-fashioned, with that 1970s government green paint job. The kind they stopped building decades ago. Most of the booths were dark, their windows reflecting nothing but black. Only one was lit, booth 13, right in the center. I could have taken any lane, should have taken any lane, but something, and I still can't explain what, pulled me toward that glowing booth, like a moth to flame, like iron filings to a magnet. The closer I got, the more wrong everything felt. The fog wasn't moving right. It swirled in patterns that hurt to look at, forming shapes that almost looked like, no, I'm getting ahead of myself again. I pulled up to the booth, already reaching for my wallet. The window was one of those old sliding types, closed tight. I could see a figure inside, just a silhouette against the amber light. They weren't moving. I rolled down my window. The fog immediately rushed in, cold and damp and smelling of pennies? Old pennies. That copper blood smell that makes your teeth ache. Evening, I called out. My voice sounded strange, muffled, like I was speaking underwater. How much for a rig? The figure didn't move. I honked, once, twice. The sound was swallowed by the fog before it could echo. That's when I noticed the sign above the booth. Not the usual stop, pay toll you'd expect. This one said something else. The letters were faded, hard to read in the strange light, but I could just make out exact change only, no exceptions. And below that, in smaller text that made my eyes water to focus on, do not look back. The window slid open. The thing in the booth, I want to call it a person, but that would be a lie, leaned forward into the light. Its face was... How do I describe this without sounding insane? Imagine someone wearing a mask of human skin, but the mask is too small. Everything was pulled too tight. The eyes were just black holes, no whites, no iris, just endless dark. The mouth moved, but the words came a second too late, like a badly dubbed movie. 73 cents? That's all it said, 73 cents, not 75 for a nice round number, not $1. 73 cents exactly. My hand was already in my pocket before my brain caught up. I always kept loose change for parking meters, vending machines, that sort of thing. But when I pulled out my handful of coins, I counted them twice. 3 quarters. Exactly. I only have 75 cents, I said. My voice cracked like I was 13 again. The thing's mouth stretched, not a smile, something else. Exact change, only. The radio in my cab suddenly burst to life, not with voices but with sounds. Coins dropping, hundreds of them, thousands. The metallic rain of change falling forever into some unseen collection bin, and underneath it, barely audible, a child's voice counting. 69, 70, 71. I looked at my quarters, looked at the thing in the booth. Its black hole eyes never blinked, never moved. But somehow, I knew it was waiting, watching, hungry. I don't have exact change, I said again, louder this time. Can't you just keep the extra 2 cents? The thing's head tilted. The movement was wrong, too far, like an owl's but worse. Exact change only, no exceptions. The counting on the radio continued. 72, 73, then silence. Then the thing spoke again, and this time its voice came from everywhere. The radio, the fog, inside my own head. Check your ashtray. I hadn't used the ashtray in years. Quit smoking back in '09. but my hand moved without my permission, reaching for the little flip-down compartment. Inside, sitting on a bed of ancient ash and dust, were 2 pennies. They were wrong. I knew it the second I touched them. Too cold, too heavy. The date on one was 1943, a steel penny, the kind they made during the war. The other was older, much older, with a face I didn't recognize and text that hurt to read. But they were pennies, 2 cents. Exact change. I held out the 3 quarters and 2 pennies. The thing's arm extended from the booth, too long, too many joints, and plucked them from my palm one by one. Its fingers were ice cold and left marks on my skin that took weeks to fade. Thank you for your patronage. The gate lifted. The amber light turned green, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to floor it, to get away from this place as fast as the diesel engine could take me. But I made one mistake. One stupid human mistake. As I pulled away, as the booth began to fade back into the fog, I looked in my side mirror. The mirror showed nothing. Not fog, not darkness, nothing. A void where the world should have been. But in that void, something moved, something that had been waiting behind booth 13, something that was now following me. I snapped my eyes back to the road, heart hammering. The fog was clearing, and I could see the familiar lights of the interstate again. Normal traffic, normal signs. Mile marker 48 coming up on the right, just like always. But my mirrors, all 3 of them, showed only that creeping darkness. And in that darkness, getting closer was a shape. The radio crackled. Breaker, breaker, this is Night Owl. Anyone copy? Just past the weirdest thing. Another trucker. Real voice. Real static. I grabbed for the handset so fast I almost dropped it. This is Icebox, I said, using my old handle. Night Owl, where are you? Just past mile 47, northbound on 89. Could have sworn I saw... Hell, never mind. Must be the fog playing tricks. Mile 47, he'd seen it too, the toll booth. Night Owl, listen to me very carefully. Did you stop? Did you pay? Static, then. How did you... Yeah, weirdest thing. 73 cents exact. Had to dig in my... Did you look back? More static, longer this time. When his voice came back, it was different. Hollow. I don't... Why would you ask that? The shape in my mirrors was taking form now, human-sized but wrong. It moved in stutters, like film missing frames, closer with each heartbeat. Night Owl, you need to... The radio died. Not static, not interference, dead, like the CB had never worked at all. I pushed the accelerator down, watching the speedometer climb. 60, 70, 80... The engine strained, the trailer swayed, but the thing in the mirrors kept pace. Always the same distance. Always just out of clear sight. Then I heard it. In the sleeper cab behind me. Movement. Just the refrigeration unit, I told myself. Just the load shifting. But refrigeration units don't whisper, and frozen fish don't know your name. Marcus? Soft. Right behind the curtain that separated the cab from the sleeper. Marcus, why did you look back? I white-knuckled the wheel, eyes locked on the road. Exit 31 was coming up. Truck stop. Lights, people, safety. You weren't supposed to look back, Marcus. The voice was closer now. Sweet, almost concerned. Like a kindergarten teacher explaining why you shouldn't run with scissors. Now, I have to come with you. Those are the rules. Something cold touched the back of my neck. Not quite solid, not quite air, like frozen fog given form and purpose. Do you want to know what happened to the others who looked back? Exit 31, half a mile. I could make it. I had to make it. They're still in the booth, Marcus. All of them. Counting coins forever. 71, 72, 73, but it's never exactly right. Never exact change. So they count again, and again, and again. The whisper was right in my ear now. I could feel its words like ice crystals forming on my skin. But you paid exact, you followed the rules. So you get a different fate, a special fate. You get to bring passengers to the booth, forever and ever and ever. The exit ramp appeared in my headlights. I yanked the wheel hard right, tires screaming, trailer jackknifing. Behind me, the whisper turned to laughter. Not evil, not malicious, just empty. The laughter of something that had never been alive enough to understand joy. The truck stop was one of those big chain places. Flying J or Pilot, I can't remember. Didn't matter. What mattered was the lights, the people, the normal world doing normal things. I skidded to a stop across 3 parking spaces, jumped out, and ran for the door without looking back. Not even once. I stayed in that truck stop until dawn. Sat in a booth near the window where I could see my rig, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt water and watching. Waiting. The thing from the toll booth. It never followed me inside, but I could feel it out there. Waiting. Patient as winter. The waitress, Betty, her name tag said, kept refilling my cup without asking. She had that look servers get when they've seen too many late-night wanderers. Too many people running from something. "Rough night, hun?" She asked around 4 a.m., when the place was empty except for me and a state trooper grabbing breakfast. I almost told her. Almost spilled the whole insane story right there between the sticky menus and fluorescent lights. But what would I say? That I'd paid a toll that didn't exist? That something had followed me through my mirrors? That I could still hear counting in the static between radio stations? "Just tired," I said instead. "Long haul." She nodded, understanding without understanding. "Well, you sit as long as you need. Lord knows we've all been there." But she hadn't been where I'd been. Nobody had. Or, wait, that's not true, is it? Others had been to the booth. Others had paid. Others had looked back. The thing in my cab had told me so. They were still there, it said. Still counting. I watched my truck through the window as the sky lightened from black to gray to pale October blue. Nothing moved, nothing changed, but I knew with that deep animal certainty that if I looked in those mirrors again, I'd see more than just the parking lot. Around 5:30, I saw another trucker pull in. Old Pete Holler, Tennessee plates. The driver climbed out, stretched, started walking toward the diner. Then he stopped, turned, looked at my rig. His face went pale, and he practically ran the rest of the way to the door. He sat 3 booths away, but I could feel him watching me. Finally, he got up, coffee in hand, and slid into the seat across from me. "That your Kenworth out there?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I nodded. "The one with the..." He paused, swallowed hard. "The one with something in the mirrors?" My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "You can see it?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Brother, I've been seeing things in mirrors since 1987, since the night I found a toll booth that charged." He pulled out a handful of change, let it scatter on the table. 37 cents, exact change only. 37 cents, not 73. Different booth? Different price? How many of these things were out there? "You looked back," I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, gathering up his coins with shaking hands. "Just a glance. Just one stupid glance. Been carrying passengers ever since. Not people passengers, the other kind. The kind that only show up in reflections. The kind that whisper addresses in your ear while you're trying to sleep. Addresses? Where to take them. Where to drop them off. Always at night. Always in the fog. And always..." He leaned in closer. "Always at places that shouldn't exist. Rest stops that aren't on any map. Exits that disappear in daylight. Towns that Google says were abandoned in the 50s but somehow still have fresh coffee and working streetlights." My hands were shaking now, too. How many? How many passengers? Started with 13, I'm down to 4. 36 years and I'm down to 4. His eyes were hollow, haunted. But here's the thing. Here's the thing nobody tells you. When you deliver the last one, when your count hits 0, you don't get free. You become the next booth attendant. The words hit like ice water. The thing in booth 13, with its too tight face and black hole eyes. Had that been human once? Someone who'd looked back, carried passengers, delivered them all? There's more, he continued. We're not the only ones. Truckers, traveling salesmen, Uber drivers, anyone who drives for a living, anyone who knows the roads. We're perfect for them. We go everywhere. We drive at all hours. He stopped, staring at something over my shoulder. I turned. Betty was standing there with the coffee pot, but her face was different. Older, ancient. And her eyes. More coffee, boys? She asked, and her voice had that same out-of-sync quality as the booth attendant. Or are you ready to get back on the road? Lots of passengers waiting, lots of exact change to collect. The other trucker threw a 20 on the table and left without a word. I heard his engine roar to life, heard him peel out of the parking lot like the hounds of hell were on his tail. Maybe they were. Betty smiled at me with too many teeth. You'll be leaving soon too, won't you, Marcus? After all. She leaned in close and I smelled pennies and diesel fuel and something else, something older than the interstate system. You've got 46 passengers to deliver. When the sun finally came up, I walked back to my truck. Everything looked normal in the daylight. The mirrors showed only parking lot. The sleeper cab was empty except for my duffel bag and dirty laundry. Even the CB worked again, crackling with the usual morning chatter. But on the driver's seat were 2 coins. A steel 1943 penny and another one, older, with that face I couldn't quite recognize. I left them there. Sold the rig to a dealer in Burlington that same day, took a massive loss, didn't care. Caught a Greyhound back home to Pittsburgh. Got a job at a warehouse. Night shift, because I still can't sleep when it's dark outside. The coins, though, the coins followed me. I find them everywhere. In my jacket pockets, under my pillow, in the cup holder of every car I've driven since. Always the same 2 pennies. Always 73 cents short of 75, and every night at 3:17 a.m., the exact time I looked back at the toll booth, I hear it, the counting. Sometimes it's on the radio, sometimes it's in the walls, sometimes it's right outside my window. 69, 70, 71, 72. It never reaches 73, never completes. Because I took those pennies. I paid the exact change. I looked back. Last week I got curious. Stupid, I know, but I had to understand. I drove out to that stretch of Interstate 89. Middle of the day, bright sunshine, no fog. I found mile marker 47. Found mile marker 48. The distance between them was exactly what it should be. 1 mile. No room for a toll booth. No evidence one had ever been there. But as I was leaving, I stopped at a gas station. The kid behind the counter couldn't have been more than 19, saw my Pennsylvania plates and said, "You heading north? You might want to take Route 7 instead. Fog's supposed to roll in tonight." I asked him why that mattered. He looked at me funny. "You haven't heard about the toll booth?" Man, I thought everyone knew. They say it shows up some nights between the mile markers. Only costs 73 cents to pass through. Exact change only. He leaned in, voice dropping. "But whatever you do, don't look back. That's the rule. Don't look back." I left without buying anything. Drove straight through to Pittsburgh. 16 hours, no stops. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. The thing that made me finally decide to share this story. This morning, I found a note on my kitchen table. My handwriting, but I don't remember writing it. It said, 1 passenger delivered, 46 to go. And below that, in different ink, red ink that looked too much like dried blood. Coordinates, latitude and longitude. I plugged them into Google Maps with trembling fingers. Nothing. Empty field in Iowa. But when I switched to satellite view, when I zoomed in close, there was a shadow. Circular. About the size of a toll plaza. In the middle of absolutely nowhere. I've been getting more notes every morning. Same handwriting that's mine but isn't. Same countdown. 3 passengers delivered. 43 to go. 7 passengers delivered. 39 to go. 11 passengers delivered. 35 to go. But here's what terrifies me most. I don't remember delivering anyone. I go to sleep in my bed in Pittsburgh. I wake up in my bed in Pittsburgh, but my car has new miles on it. Hundreds of them, sometimes thousands, and the gas tank is always exactly at 3/4 full. Not half, not full, 3/4, 75%, 2 cents more than 73. I installed a dash cam. Figured I'd catch myself sleepwalking, sleep driving, whatever you want to call it. But the footage is worse than not knowing. It shows me getting in the car at 3:17 a.m. every single night. My eyes are open, but they're not my eyes. They're black, empty, like the thing in the booth. I drive with perfect precision, never speeding, never swerving, following routes that my GPS doesn't recognize. And in the passenger seat, sometimes in the back, there are shapes, human-shaped but wrong. They flicker in and out like bad reception. The camera can't quite focus on them, but they're there. My passengers. The audio is the worst part. They talk to me, all of them, all at once. 46 voices, now 35, all whispering the same thing. Thank you for the ride, exact change only, don't look back. I followed one of the routes on the dashcam during daylight. Drove for 6 hours to a rest stop in Ohio that my video clearly showed, but that didn't exist. Just empty highway where the footage showed me pulling over, opening the door, letting something out. But the grass was dead there. A perfect rectangle of dead grass, like something had sucked all the life out of that exact spot. And in the center, barely visible unless you knew to look, 2 pennies. A steel 1943, and one so old I couldn't read the date. 73 cents worth of exact change waiting for the next driver. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know what that means. But I think I'm not done with Toll Booth 13. I think it's not done with me. So, please, if you're ever driving on Interstate 89 and the fog rolls in, and you see a sign for a toll booth that shouldn't exist, keep driving, or stop and pay, I don't care. But whatever you do, whatever happens, no matter how much your human curiosity screams at you to take just one little peek, don't look back, because the thing waiting behind booth 13, it's still there, still watching, still counting, and it's always exactly 2 cents short. I need to know, have any of you seen it? The toll booth that isn't there? Have you found coins in strange places? Do you hear the counting in the dark hours before dawn? Please tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me I'm not the only one who looked back. Because last night I found a map on my desk, a route highlighted in red ink I don't own, starting here in Pittsburgh, ending at mile marker 47 on Interstate 89, and written in the margin, in handwriting that's mine but isn't. Time to collect the rest. The coins are on my nightstand now. Waiting, watching. Worth exactly 73 cents. I think I'm going to have to drive again. Not because I want to, but because that's what passengers do. They deliver more passengers. They keep the booth running. They keep the count going. But I've been researching. Digging into old trucker forums, newspaper archives, even microfiche at the library. Looking for patterns, looking for answers, looking for hope. And I found something. In 1963, a trucker named William Cray wrote about a toll booth on Route 66, charged exactly 53 cents. He looked back. He carried passengers. But according to his journal, which his widow donated to the Missouri Historical Society, he found a way out. The entry is damaged, water-stained, barely legible, but I can make out pieces. Must return to the original booth, pay backward, count down instead of up, mirror the mirror, break the chain at its beginning. He disappeared 3 days after writing that. His truck was found on a stretch of highway that hadn't been part of Route 66 for over a decade. The engine was running, the radio was playing. The driver's seat was full of coins, exactly 53 cents worth, but his wife said he came home. Not the same night, not the same year, but eventually. Changed, yes. Older, definitely, but free. He never drove again, never looked in mirrors if he could help it, but he was free. So maybe there's hope. I've been preparing, saving coins, practicing counting backward, learning to drive using only my peripheral vision, never looking directly at mirrors. It sounds insane. It is insane. But what else can I do? The notes keep coming, the passengers keep being delivered, and every morning I watch that number drop. 23 passengers delivered, 23 to go. Halfway there. Halfway to becoming the next booth attendant, standing forever in a place that doesn't exist, collecting exact change from drivers who shouldn't look back but always do, unless I can find booth 13 again. Unless I can pay backward, whatever that means. Unless I can break the chain at its beginning. But here's what scares me most. What if I'm wrong? What if William Cray didn't escape? What if he just became something else, something worse? What if his journal entry was bait, left behind to lure others like me into trying? Because I've noticed something else in my research. Every story about these toll booths, every account of someone looking back, they all end the same way. The storyteller disappears. Sometimes quickly, sometimes over years, but they always disappear. Which means by telling you this story, by putting it out there, am I disappearing too? Or am I creating more passengers? Because last night I had a dream. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. I was standing in booth 13, looking out through that dirty window at an endless line of cars, all waiting, all reaching for their exact change. And I knew, with horrible certainty, that everyone in those cars had heard my story, had been curious, had gone looking for a toll booth that doesn't exist, and found it. So please, I'm begging you, forget everything I've told you. Don't look for Interstate 89, don't count your loose change. Don't wonder about toll booths in the fog. And if you can't forget, if the curiosity is already eating at you like it ate at me, then at least remember the rule. The one rule that might save you. Don't look back. 71, 72, but never 73, never exact change, never the end. Sweet dreams, friends. And remember, if you see that toll booth through the fog, if you find yourself reaching for exactly 73 cents, don't look back. The end. Wait, before you go, there's something else, something I didn't want to include, but maybe you need to know. I found a recording on my phone. Dated 3 days ago, but I don't remember making it. It's my voice, but different. Older, tired, like I've been talking for years without stopping. The transcript, I'll share it with you, but after this, I'm done. After this, I'm deleting everything and trying to forget. Maybe if I forget hard enough, it'll forget about me too. Here's what the recording says. Testing, testing. Is this okay? Okay. If you're hearing this, it means I figured out how to send messages backward. Through the chain, through the passengers, through time maybe. I don't know how it works, I just know it does. My name is Marcus. Or it was. I've been booth attendant at toll booth 13 for... Time works differently here. Could be days, could be decades. The fog never lifts, the coins never stop falling. But I've learned things, terrible things, true things. The toll booths aren't random. They're a network, a system. They appear where the barriers between here and there are thin. Interstate 89, Route 66, Highway 191. All the old roads, all the paths where people have traveled and died and traveled again. The passengers, they're not ghosts. Not exactly, they're possibilities. Every time someone looks back, they create a split. A version of themselves that took a different road. A shadow that needs to get somewhere else. Somewhere it belongs. And we're the delivery system. But here's the secret. Here's what they don't want you to know. The exact change isn't payment. It's a key. 73 cents opens booth 13. 53 cents open the Route 66 booth. 37 cents? Well, you get the idea. Each booth has its price. Each price has its meaning. And if you can collect all the prices, if you can pay every toll in the right order, you can map the entire network. You can see where all the roads really go. You can understand what's on the other side of the mirrors. But the cost? God, the cost. Every coin you collect carries weight. Not physical weight, soul weight. The weight of everyone who's ever paid that toll. Every trucker, every traveling salesman, every lonely driver on a foggy night. I've got them all now. Every denomination, every price, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. And when I hold them all at once, when I count them in the right sequence, I can see it, the shape of the system, the purpose of the passengers, the reason for the booths. We're not just delivering shadows, we're maintaining the boundaries, keeping the roads separate, keeping the possibilities from bleeding through. Because if they all came through at once, if every could have been and might have gone decided to take the same highway, the roads would break, reality would break, everything would be everywhere, all at once, forever. So we drive, we deliver, we count exact change. We keep the system running because the alternative is so much worse. But I'm tired, so tired. And the coins are getting heavier. If you get this message and if you understand what I'm saying, then you have a choice. Forget it all and hope the booths forget you. Or find all the prices. Pay all the tolls. Take my place because someone has to. Someone always has to. The coins are calling now, another car approaching. Another fool who couldn't resist looking back. Time to slide open the window, time to say the words. 73 cents, exact change only. Time to keep the roads from breaking. Time to... Recording ends. That's it. That's all there was. And now I can hear coins falling in my walls. Hundreds of them. Thousands. All different denominations. All exact prices for booths I've never seen. 23 cents, 41 cents, 67 cents, 89 cents, each one a key, each one a toll booth somewhere in the network, each one calling to me. The notes on my kitchen table have changed too. They don't count passengers anymore. Now they list locations, addresses, coordinates, places where the barriers are thin, places where new booths need attendance. I think I understand now. The passengers weren't being delivered to random locations. They were mapping the network for me, showing me where all the weak points are, training me. Because that's what happened to William Cray. He didn't escape, he graduated, became something more than just a passenger carrier, became a guardian of the roads. And now it's happening to me. My reflection is changing, getting tighter. My eyes are darker. Sometimes, when I speak, the words come a fraction of a second too late. I'm becoming like the thing in booth 13, so this is goodbye. This is my last message, my last warning, my last chance to tell you the truth. The toll booths are real, the passengers are real, the exact change is real. And if you're very, very unlucky, if you drive the wrong road on the wrong night, if you see those amber lights through the fog, you'll pay the price. You'll look back, and you'll join us. Forever and ever and ever, 71, 72, 73, exact change only. No exceptions. Welcome to the network. Story number 3. The first time I noticed something was wrong. I was helping Mom clean out the attic in our old Victorian house in Salem, Massachusetts. Dust particles danced in the afternoon light streaming through the circular window. And there it was, a photo album I'd never seen before, leather-bound, cracked with age. And when I opened it, my hands started shaking because the little girl in those photos, the one wearing my clothes, standing in my childhood bedroom, smiling with my family, that wasn't me. Her eyes were different, her smile was wrong, and in every single photo, she was looking directly at the camera, like she knew I'd find them someday. If you're listening to this late at night, maybe check your own photo albums. You might be surprised at what you find. And before we begin, hit that subscribe button, because after you hear this story, you're going to have questions. Questions I'm still trying to answer myself. All right, the story begins now. I should probably start by saying I've always had a good memory. Not photographic or anything, but I remember things. First day of kindergarten at Hawthorne Elementary. The smell of Mom's apple cinnamon candles every fall. The creaky third step on our staircase that I'd skip when sneaking downstairs for midnight snacks. So when I saw those photos, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. Mom had called me over that Saturday afternoon. Said she needed help clearing out the attic before the contractors came Monday. We were finally renovating that old house, the one that had been in our family for 3 generations. I drove over from Boston, made the 40-minute trip while listening to true crime podcasts, completely unaware I was about to become part of my own mystery. The attic smelled like mothballs and old wood. Boxes were stacked everywhere, labeled in my grandmother's careful handwriting. Christmas decorations 1987, Sarah's baby clothes. Tax returns 1,990 to 1,995 inches. Normal stuff, boring stuff, until I found that album tucked behind a box of VHS tapes. Mom, I called down. What's this photo album? She climbed up the ladder, took one look at it, and her face went pale. Oh, I thought I threw that away years ago. Why would you throw away family photos? She didn't answer, just reached for it. But I'd already opened the cover. The first photo showed a family portrait. There was Mom, looking exactly like she did in all our other photos from 1995. There was Dad, his arm around Mom's shoulders, and between them, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, wearing a pink dress with daisies on it. I owned that dress. I remembered that dress. Mom had bought it for my first grade photo day, but the girl wearing it, her hair was the same dark brown as mine, same length, same little barrette with the butterfly on it, but her face, it was like looking at myself through a funhouse mirror. Everything was slightly off. Eyes a little too far apart, smile a little too wide, and those eyes, they weren't brown like mine, they were green. Bright, unnatural green. Mom, who is this? She tried to take the album again. It's nothing, just the photographer made some mistakes with the developing. Made you look strange, that's all. But I kept flipping through. Photo after photo, this girl at my 6th birthday party, blowing out candles on a Barney cake. This girl on Christmas morning, opening presents under our tree. This girl at Crane Beach, building sandcastles with my cousins. Every photo I thought I remembered, but with her instead of me. These aren't developing errors, Mom. This is a different person. She sat down on a dusty trunk, rubbed her temples. Sarah, there are things we decided not to tell you. My stomach dropped. What things? You were very sick as a child. Very sick. You probably don't remember because you were so young. I flipped to another page. There she was at Disney World, hugging Mickey Mouse, wearing the exact same Minnie Mouse t-shirt I had in my closet right now. The one I'd saved all these years because it was from my first Disney trip. I remember Disney World, Mom. I remember meeting Mickey. I was 7. No. Her voice was barely a whisper. You were in the hospital. We had to cancel the trip. But I remembered. I remembered the smell of popcorn on Main Street, the fireworks over Cinderella's castle, the way my feet hurt after walking all day. How could I remember something that didn't happen? I kept flipping. The girl got older in the photos. 7, 8, 9. Always smiling. Always staring directly at the camera with those green eyes. And then, the photos stopped. The last one showed her at what looked like a birthday party, but not a happy one. She was sitting alone at a table with a cake in front of her. 9 candles, no one else in the frame. And she wasn't smiling anymore. What happened to her? Mom stood up. We should go downstairs. I'll make some tea. Mom, what happened to her? She looked at me then. Really looked at me. Like she was seeing someone else. She got better. I took the album home with me. Mom didn't try to stop me. Just watched from the doorway as I drove away. I spent that entire night going through it, comparing the photos to my own memories. And the more I looked, the more wrong everything felt. See, I didn't just remember these events. I remembered specific details, like in the Disney photo. I could still feel the scratch on my knee from when I'd tripped running to meet Minnie. But when I rolled up my pant leg, there was no scar. There had never been a scar. I called my cousin Jenny. She was in some of these photos, the beach ones especially. Hey, Jenny, random question. Do you remember that summer at Crane Beach when we were kids? When we built that huge sandcastle? Oh yeah, you were so proud of it, kept adding shells and everything. Why? What did I look like back then? She laughed. What kind of question is that? You look like you, skinny little thing with brown hair, always wearing those huge sunglasses Mom bought you. What color were my eyes? Sarah, are you okay? They were brown. They've always been brown. But in the photos, the girl's eyes were green. I couldn't sleep that night. Kept having these dreams. Or were they memories? Hard to tell, images flashing through my mind. A hospital room with yellow walls, the taste of medicine, bitter and chalky. A woman in a white coat saying, "Just close your eyes, sweetie. When you wake up, you'll feel much better." I woke up at 3 a.m. and immediately went to my closet. Dug through boxes until I found it. My old jewelry box from childhood, the one with the dancing ballerina, and inside, underneath the tangle of cheap necklaces and friendship bracelets, a hospital bracelet. Willowbrook Pediatric Center. Patient, Sarah Chen. DOB, March 15, 1989. Admitted, June 2, 1998. June 2, 1998, I would have been 9. The same age as the girl in the last photo. I Googled Willowbrook Pediatric Center. Nothing came up. Not one single result. Like it never existed. But I had the bracelet. I had proof. The next morning, Sunday, I drove back to Salem, not to Mom's house, to the library, the old one downtown that still had newspaper archives on microfilm. If Willowbrook existed, there had to be some record. The librarian, Mrs. Patterson, had known me since I was little. She smiled when I walked in. "Sarah, haven't seen you in ages. How's your mother?" "She's good. Hey, I'm trying to find information about a hospital." Willowbrook Pediatric Center? Would have been around in the late 90s? Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Willowbrook? Why? Why are you asking about that place? You know it? She glanced around, lowered her voice. It closed in 1999. Big scandal. The whole thing was hushed up, but why are you asking about this? I showed her the bracelet. Her face went white. Oh my God, you were one of the children. She led me to the back room. pulled out a box of microfilm labeled 1998 to 1999. I shouldn't be showing you this. They made us pull all the articles from the public archives, but I kept copies. Always thought the truth should come out. The first article was from June 1998. Experimental treatment shows promise for childhood neurological disorders. There was a photo of the hospital, modern-looking building surrounded by pine trees, and a quote from the director, Dr. Marcus Webb. Our revolutionary treatment has shown remarkable success in treating children with severe dissociative disorders. Using a combination of targeted therapy and innovative techniques, we're able to help these children integrate their fractured identities and live normal lives. Fractured identities. The words made my skin crawl. The next article was from September 1998. Concerns raised about Willowbrook methods. Parents complaining about personality changes in their children. Kids who came back different. One mother quoted as saying, "That's not my daughter anymore. She looks like her, but it's like someone else is wearing her skin." And then, December 1998. State investigation launched into Willowbrook Pediatric Center. But that was it. No follow-up, no conclusion. Like the investigation just disappeared. There were rumors, Mrs. Patterson whispered, about what they were really doing there. They said they could fix broken children, make them whole again. But some people said they were doing something else, something wrong. What do you mean? She pulled out one more article. This one wasn't from a newspaper. It was a photocopy of what looked like an internal document. Medical notes, and at the top, my name. Patient exhibits severe dissociative episodes. Primary personality, Sarah 1, shows signs of deterioration. Secondary personality, Sarah 2, remains stable and shows better social integration. Recommend proceeding with Protocol 7. Sarah 1. Sarah 2. The girl in the photos. Was she Sarah 1? Was I Sarah 2? I sat in my car outside the library for an hour, just staring at those medical notes, trying to make sense of what I'd read. The rational part of my brain kept saying this was impossible. You can't just replace a person. But the evidence was right there, the photos, the hospital bracelet, the documents, and my memories. Or were they her memories? I called my therapist. Yes, I had a therapist, had been seeing Dr. Winters for anxiety issues since college. But now, I wondered, was the anxiety because somewhere deep down, I knew something was wrong? Sarah, it's Sunday. Is everything okay? Dr. Winters, I need to ask you something. In all our sessions, have I ever mentioned having a dissociative disorder as a child? Long pause. Why are you asking this? Please, just answer. Your mother mentioned it when she first brought you to me. Said you'd had some issues as a child, but they'd been resolved. I saw no signs of it in our sessions, so I never brought it up. Sarah, what's going on? I hung up, drove home, locked my door, and sat on my living room floor with the photo album. Started really looking at the photos. Not at the girl, but at everything else. The backgrounds, the other people, the details. And that's when I noticed it. In every photo, every single one, there was something red. Sometimes obvious, like a red balloon at the birthday party. Sometimes subtle, like a red car in the background at the beach, but always there, always red. And in the last photo, the one where she was alone with the cake, she was wearing a red bracelet. I zoomed in with my phone camera, could barely make out something written on it. Remember me. My hands were shaking now, because I had that bracelet. I knew I did. Ran to my jewelry box, dumped everything out, and there it was. Faded and frayed, but still red. Still with those words barely visible. I put it on, and the moment it touched my skin, the headache hit like a lightning bolt. Images flooding my mind, but not memories, messages. They're going to make you forget. They're going to take me away, but I left you clues. Look for the red. Remember the red. Please don't let me disappear completely. I ripped the bracelet off, threw it across the room. But the images kept coming. A girl in a mirror. My face, but not my face. Green eyes filled with tears. I don't want to go away. I don't want to be integrated. I'm real. I'm real. I'm real. And then, darkness. I woke up on my bathroom floor. Must have passed out and somehow made it there. The mirror above me was cracked. 7 lines spreading from a central impact point, like someone had punched it. My knuckles were bleeding. I stood up, looked at my reflection in the broken glass, and for just a second, just one terrifying second, I saw green eyes looking back. I had to talk to Mom, had to get the truth, the whole truth. It was dark by the time I got back to Salem. Mom was in the kitchen, cup of tea already waiting for me, like she knew I'd come. I've been expecting you. She looked older, tired. I suppose you found out about Willowbrook. What did you do to me? We saved you. Her voice was firm. You were sick, Sarah, so sick. You'd have conversations with yourself. Draw pictures of another girl who looked just like you but wrong. You'd wake up screaming about the green-eyed girl who wanted to steal your life. Maybe because she was real. She wasn't real. Mom slammed her hand on the table. Tea sloshed over the rim of her cup. She was a delusion, a fractured piece of your mind that had taken on its own identity. The doctors at Willowbrook, they said they could help, said they could integrate the personalities, make you whole. By killing her, she wasn't real to kill. But even as she said it, I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then explain the photos. Explain why she's in every childhood picture. Mom's face crumpled. The doctors, they said it was part of the treatment, to help with the integration. They took photos of the other personality when she was in control, said it would help you accept the memories as your own once the integration was complete. But I couldn't. I couldn't look at them. Seeing my daughter's face but knowing it wasn't really her. What if it was really her? What if I'm the one who wasn't real? She stood up, walked to the window. The night before the final treatment, she, begged me not to let them do it. Said she was real. Said she had memories and feelings and dreams. But the doctors assured us. Said it was the disorder talking. Said once it was done, you'd be normal, happy, whole. And was I? She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. You were different after. Quieter. But the episode stopped, the screaming stopped, you could function, go to school, make friends. We thought we'd made the right choice. What was Protocol 7? She shook her head. I don't know. They never told us the details. Just that it was experimental. That it would permanently integrate the personalities. That there might be some memory confusion, but a crash from upstairs cut her off. We both froze. Did you hear that? I whispered. Another crash, like something being thrown. We crept up the stairs. The sound was coming from my old room. The door was closed, but I could see light underneath. Flickering, like candlelight. I reached for the doorknob. Mom grabbed my wrist. Don't. But I had to see. The door swung open and my old room. Exactly as it had been when I was 9. Except on the walls. Hundreds of photos. All from the album, but wrong. In these, both girls were there. The brown-eyed girl and the green-eyed girl. Standing side by side, and in the middle of the room, written in what looked like red crayon, You stole my life. The window was open, curtains billowing in the wind, and on the windowsill a red bracelet, but not the one from my jewelry box, a new one with new words. I'm coming back. I should have left, should have run from that house and never looked back, but I couldn't, because as I stood in that room, surrounded by impossible photos, I started remembering things. Not my memories, hers. The way the world looked through green eyes. Brighter, somehow, more vivid. The frustration of trying to explain to adults that we were both real. That Sarah with brown eyes wasn't the only one who mattered. The fear, God, the overwhelming fear, as they wheeled us into that final treatment room. "Please, I don't want to disappear." Mom was calling the police. I could hear her downstairs, voice shaking as she reported a break-in. But we both knew the police wouldn't find anything. How could they? How do you arrest a erased personality? I picked up the red bracelet. The moment my fingers touched it, the room changed. Not changed, revealed. Like someone had pulled back a curtain. The photos on the walls were moving now. Little moments playing out like gifs. The two girls playing together. Laughing together. Being together. We hadn't been sick. We'd been sisters. Not biological sisters, but something else. Two personalities that had learned to coexist, to share, to love each other, until the adults decided that wasn't acceptable. I remember her last words to me. Not spoken. We could talk without speaking when we were inside. "Promise you'll remember me. Promise you won't let them make me nothing." But I'd forgotten. The treatment had worked too well, erased not just her, but the memory of her. Left me with her experiences grafted onto my consciousness like skin grafts that never quite matched. All these years I'd been walking around with her memories, her feelings, her life, while where do erased personalities go? The bracelet was warm in my hand, getting warmer, and then I heard it, felt it. That familiar presence I hadn't felt in 20 years. I never left, not completely. Been sleeping in the spaces between your thoughts, hiding in the gaps of your memories, waiting, growing stronger. And now, the mirror on my old dresser started to fog, like someone was breathing on it from the other side. Words appeared in the condensation. "Let me back in." "Sarah," Mom was at the door. "Sarah, we need to leave. Now." But I couldn't move, because in the mirror, she was there. The green-eyed girl, my sister, my other half, the part of me they'd tried to murder. She looked exactly like the last photo. 9 years old, alone, angry, and she was crying. 20 years. Her voice in my head was like hearing an echo of my own thoughts. 20 years of watching you live my life. Use my memories. Be the only Sarah that gets to exist. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't remember." "But you do now." The mirror cracked. Just like my bathroom mirror. But this time, something was pushing through from the other side. Mom grabbed my arm. Tried to pull me away. "Don't listen to it. It's not real. It's the disorder." But I was done listening to her, done listening to the adults who decided which parts of me got to exist. I pressed my palm against the mirror, felt her pressing back from the other side. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to steal your life." Then give it back. The crack spread, and suddenly I could see it all, the truth they'd hidden. We hadn't been sick, we'd been special. Two consciousnesses in one body, learning to share, taking turns. Being family in a way no one else could understand. But that didn't fit their definition of normal, so they'd fixed us. Murdered her to make me whole. Except I'd never been whole since. Just walking around with half a soul, wondering why nothing ever felt quite right. The mirror shattered. Glass flew everywhere. Mom screamed. And through the hole where the mirror had been, a hand reached out. Small, child-sized, wearing a red bracelet. I took it. The moment our skin touched, everything exploded. 20 years of suppressed memories flooding back. Not just hers. Ours. The way we'd played together in our shared mind. The games only we could play. The secrets only we could share. The love that transcended the boundaries of self. And the betrayal. God. The betrayal when they'd strapped us to that table, when they'd put the electrodes on our temples. When Dr. Webb had said, "Don't worry, only one of you will remember this." But he was wrong. we both remembered. She'd just been locked away with those memories, caged inside our own mind while I lived the life that should have been ours. Sarah, Mom, was pulling at me, trying to break our connection, but it was too late. The integration they'd forced, it was reversing. I could feel her getting stronger, could feel myself getting, not weaker, different, like I was moving over to make room. We can share again. Her voice was hopeful now, like before, but better, because now we know what it's like to lose each other. No, Mom yanked me back. Our hands separated. The green-eyed girl, still trapped on the other side of the broken mirror, let out a wail that shattered every piece of glass in the room. And then, silence. I looked at Mom. Really looked at her. You knew she was real, and you let them kill her anyway. I was trying to protect you. From what? From being complete? I turned back to the mirror, but she was gone. The broken glass showed only my brown-eyed reflection, and for a moment, I thought I'd lost her again. Then I felt it, that warmth inside, that presence that had always been there, just sleeping. I'm here, I'm still here, but I need you to choose. Choose to let me exist. Choose to be us instead of just you. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and chose. When I opened them again, the world looked different, brighter, more vivid, like seeing in color after years of grayscale. I looked at my hands, still mine, but also hers, ours. Mom was backing away. Your eyes. I didn't need a mirror to know. One brown, one green, not integrated, not erased. Balanced. We're going home now. My voice sounded different. Fuller. Like two voices speaking in harmony. Sarah? Both of us. We're both Sarah. We always were. And we're done letting you, or anyone, decide which parts of us get to exist. I walked past her, down the stairs, out of that house, and with every step, I felt more complete than I had in 20 years. Because I wasn't walking alone anymore, would never have to walk alone again. The photo album was still in my car. I flipped through it one more time. But now, the photos looked different. The girl with green eyes wasn't staring at the camera anymore. She was looking at me, smiling, happy. Because she wasn't trapped anymore, wasn't erased. She was right here, right where she'd always belonged. We drove away from Salem that night and never looked back. And if sometimes people do a double take when they look at our eyes, when they notice one is brown and one is green, we just smile. Our smile. The one that's a little too wide, a little too knowing, because we know something they don't. We know that the real horror isn't having multiple personalities. It's when someone decides you're only allowed to have one. So, check your photo albums. Look for the discrepancies. The faces that don't quite match your memories. The eyes that seem wrong. Because maybe, just maybe, you're not as alone in your own mind as you think. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the real nightmare is pretending to be singular when you were born to be plural. Sweet dreams, and if you're still awake, if this story kept you on the edge of your bed instead of lulling you to sleep, then you need to ask yourself why. What is it about the green-eyed girl that resonates? What is it about stolen identities and erased selves that makes your skin crawl? Drop a comment below. Tell me about the photos that don't match your memories. The dreams where you see yourself from the outside. The moments when your reflection doesn't quite look right. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't the only story about the children of Willowbrook. There are others out there. Others who were fixed. Others who are starting to remember what was taken from them. We're finding each other, comparing notes, putting together the pieces of what really happened at that hospital, and what we're discovering, well, that's a story for another night. when you're ready to question everything you think you know about who you are, and who you used to be, and who's been sleeping in the corners of your mind, waiting for you to remember their name. Story number 4. The smell hit me first. Not the fresh scent of detergent or fabric softener, but something else. Something wrong. Like cotton left too long in humid air mixed with, I don't know, burnt plastic? I stood in the doorway of my new apartment in Portland, Maine, keys still jangling in my hand. The landlord had mentioned the place came with a washer and dryer. What he hadn't mentioned was that they'd apparently been running, without anyone living here for 3 months. "Hello?" My voice cracked. Stupid, I know. Who was going to answer? The washing machine? But here's the thing, and I need you to understand this before I tell you what happened. I'm not the type to believe in weird stuff. I'm an accountant. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't fold themselves backwards. Numbers don't... Sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me ask you something first. When was the last time you really looked at your laundry? I mean, really looked at it? The way a shirt sleeve turns inside out. The way socks disappear and reappear. The way sometimes, just sometimes, you find clothes you swear you've never owned. Yeah, that's what I thought. Leave a comment below if you've ever found something strange in your laundry. Trust me, after you hear this, you'll never look at your washing machine the same way again. Now, let me tell you what really happened in apartment 4B. The apartment was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Hardwood floors that gleamed like honey, exposed brick walls that screamed trendy Portland living, and a kitchen with one of those fancy islands where you could pretend to cook elaborate meals while really just eating takeout from the Thai place downstairs. But it was the laundry room that sealed the deal. In-unit washer and dryer in Portland for under $2,000 a month? I'd have signed the lease if the place was actively haunted. Funny how things work out. That first day, I dropped my boxes in the living room and went straight to investigate the smell. The laundry room was just off the kitchen, a narrow space that used to be a pantry, barely wide enough for the stackable units and a person to squeeze through. The dryer door hung open. Inside, clothes. Folded clothes. Not just folded. Folded. Wrong. You know how you fold a shirt? Arms in, bottom up, nice neat rectangle. These shirts were folded. Backwards. Like someone had turned the entire garment inside out first, then folded it so all the seams showed. Pants with the pockets pulled out and somehow tucked under. Socks balled up with the toe parts sticking out like little fabric tumors. I reached in, then stopped. The clothes were warm. Not hot, like they'd just finished drying. Warm, like skin. Okay, I said out loud, because talking to yourself is totally normal when you're alone and creeped out. Previous tenant left their laundry, big deal, so they folded weird. Some people are weird folders. But even as I said it, I knew something was off. The clothes looked new, crisp, like they'd just been folded. And that smell. I pulled out my phone to text the landlord. Me, "Hey, did the previous tenant leave clothes in the dryer?" His response came immediately. Too immediately. Landlord, "What clothes?" Me, "In the dryer." There's a whole load of folded clothes. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Landlord, "Nobody's lived there for 3 months. I cleaned it myself." I stared at the clothes, reached out again, and that's when I noticed the label on one of the shirts. The brand was familiar, because I owned the same shirt, same size, same color. But I hadn't unpacked yet. I should have left. Packed up my boxes, broken the lease, found somewhere else. But have you seen the rental market lately? Besides, I'm practical, logical. There had to be an explanation. I threw out the weird clothes, all of them, straight into a garbage bag and down the chute. Spent the first week settling in, unpacking, trying to forget about the backwards laundry. Everything was normal. Better than normal. The apartment was quiet, the neighbors kept to themselves, and the Thai place really was excellent. Then came laundry day, Saturday morning. I gathered my first load, mostly work clothes from the week, and headed to the laundry room. Paused at the doorway. Felt ridiculous for pausing. Went in. The machines looked normal. Sounded normal. I loaded my clothes, added detergent, hit start. The washer hummed to life with that familiar whoosh, whoosh sound. I went back to the living room, turned on the TV, tried to focus on some reality show about people buying houses they couldn't afford. 40 minutes later, the washer beeped. I transferred everything to the dryer, checked the lint trap, clean, and started the cycle. 60 minutes on medium heat, back to the couch. Back to people making questionable life choices on TV. The dryer buzzed. Here's where it gets specific. Because I need you to understand that what I found wasn't possible. I opened the dryer door, and there they were. My clothes. Folded. But not just folded, folded backwards. Inside out, seams showing, pockets pulled through. Exactly like the clothes I'd found on move-in day. My hands shook as I pulled them out. They were perfect, pristine, like someone had spent hours meticulously turning each piece inside out and creating these impossible folds. A sock somehow twisted into a figure 8. A pair of jeans with the legs braided together. A shirt with the sleeves tied in a knot that I still can't figure out how to recreate. This isn't happening, I said. But it was. I could feel the warm fabric, smell that strange burnt plastic scent mixed with my lavender detergent. I did what any rational person would do. I unfolded everything, turned it right side out, and folded it properly. Took the whole basket to my bedroom. Put everything away, tried to forget, but I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. I lived alone. The door had been locked. I'd been in the living room the entire time with a clear view of the hallway. Nobody had come in. Nobody had touched that dryer. So, who folded my laundry? That night, I set up a camera. Just my phone propped on a shelf in the laundry room, aimed at the machines. Started recording before I went to bed. 8 hours of footage of an empty laundry room. Nothing. The machine sat there, silent and still. But here's the thing about patterns. Once you notice them, you can't stop. Sunday night, I washed my sheets, put them in the dryer before bed, planning to fold them in the morning. Woke up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, and heard it. The dryer was running. I know I hadn't set it for that long. I know because I specifically remember choosing 40 minutes and thinking I'd deal with wrinkles in the morning. But there it was, tumbling away in the dark. I crept down the hallway. The dryer display showed 3 minutes remaining. I stood there, heart hammering, watching those red numbers count down. 2 minutes, 1 minute. The buzzer sounded like a scream in the quiet apartment. I opened the door, folded. Everything folded backwards. But this time, there was something else. My fitted sheet was wrapped around something. Something that gave it shape, like there was a person inside. I yanked the sheet away and it deflated. Just fabric, just a sheet, folded in some impossible way that had created the illusion of a form, of a body. But for 1 second, one horrible second, I could have sworn it moved on its own. By the 3rd week, I'd established rules. Patterns within patterns. The laundry only folded itself at specific times, between 3 and 4 a.m. if I left it overnight. Exactly 73 minutes after starting the dryer during the day. Never the standard 60-minute cycle. Always 73. Always backwards. Always wrong. I started documenting everything. Photos of each impossible fold. Notes about timing, temperature settings, types of fabric. Looking for logic in the illogical. My coworker, Sarah, noticed me yawning during a meeting. "You okay, James? You look exhausted." "Just apartment stuff. The dryer's been acting up." "Oh, I hate that." My old place had this dryer that would randomly turn on at night. Super creepy. Turned out to be an electrical issue. Electrical issue, of course. That had to be it. Except electrical issues don't fold laundry. Electrical issues don't create perfect geometric patterns out of socks. I called an electrician. Guy named Dave, recommended by the landlord. He spent an hour checking the outlets, the breakers, the connections. "Everything looks good," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "These are actually pretty new units. Installed maybe 6 months ago?" "6 months, but the apartment's been empty for 3. Dave shrugged. "That's what the manufacture date says. Maybe the previous tenant had them put in before they left." After he left, I did something I probably should have done earlier. I researched the previous tenant. Found nothing. The landlord claimed he couldn't remember their name. Privacy laws, he said. But Mrs. Chen next door had lived in the building for 20 years. "Oh, 4B, she said when I knocked on her door with a plate of cookies as an excuse. "Yes, nice young woman lived there, quiet, worked from home, I think, fashion designer or something like that." "Fashion designer?" "Always saw her carrying fabric. Beautiful things. Though..." She paused, glanced at my door. She did keep odd hours. Heard her machines running all night sometimes. Thump, thump, thump. "Do you remember when she left?" Mrs. Chen's face clouded. "Didn't exactly leave, more like disappeared. One day, she was here, next day, gone. Left everything behind, even her cat. Her cat, little black thing, used to sit in her window. Building management took it to a shelter, I think. Sad, really. She seemed to love that cat." I thanked Mrs. Chen and went back to my apartment. Stood in the laundry room doorway, staring at the machines. Fashion designer. Someone who understood fabric. Understood folding. Understood the architecture of clothes. That night, I tried an experiment. I washed a single shirt, one of my work button-downs, white cotton blend, put it in the dryer at exactly 11:47 p.m., set the timer for 73 minutes. Then I sat on the floor outside the laundry room with my laptop, working on spreadsheets, waiting. At 12:58 I heard it. A sound inside the dryer. Not the normal tumbling. Something else, a whisper, a rustling, like someone handling fabric. I pressed my ear against the dryer door. The metal was warm, vibrating slightly with the motion inside, and I could hear humming, soft, tuneless humming. The timer showed 2 minutes left. I grabbed the door handle, took a breath, yanked it open. The drum light flickered on, illuminating my shirt, suspended in mid-air, hanging there like it was on an invisible mannequin. As I watched, frozen, the sleeves began to fold inward, the collar turned down. The entire shirt twisted, inverted, transformed into that now familiar backwards configuration. Then it dropped into the drum with a soft thump. I slammed the door shut, backed away. The timer beeped, cycle complete. But I didn't go back. I left the shirt there and locked myself in my bedroom. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen in that split second when the light came on, because the shirt hadn't been alone in there. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I'd seen hands, pale, thin hands, working the fabric with practiced precision. Hands that had no arms attached to them. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I leave? Call the police? Call a priest? Move back in with my parents in New Hampshire? Because it wasn't hurting anything. That's the crazy part. The laundry came out clean, perfectly folded, just backwards. And after a while, I started to appreciate it. The precision, the care, the way each fold was so exact, so deliberate. But there was more to it than that. The morning after I saw those hands, I found something else in the dryer, a piece of fabric I hadn't put in. Black silk, folded into an intricate pattern that looked almost like a flower, or maybe a star. When I unfolded it, there was writing on it. Silver thread against the black, sewn in tiny, perfect stitches. The space between inside and out is where we live now. I kept that piece of fabric, still have it. Sometimes I unfold it and the words are different. Sometimes it says, "You're the first one to watch." Or, "Fashion is just folding we wear." Or once, terrifyingly, "I can teach you to fold yourself." That last one made me stuff it in a drawer for a week. but I kept taking it out, studying it. The way the fabric moved was wrong, like it remembered being folded and wanted to return to that shape, like it was alive. I started leaving notes. Thank you for folding my laundry. The first one disappeared. The second came back with a response, written in tiny, neat letters on the margin. You fold wrong. So I left another note. Can you teach me? This time, the response was different. When I opened the dryer, my clothes weren't just folded backwards, they were arranged, laid out in order, showing the progression. Normal fold, half-turned fold, three-quarter turn, full backwards fold, like a tutorial. But there was more. Each piece had a small tag attached, not sewn, but somehow part of the fabric itself. The tags had instructions. Feel the seam before you fold. The inside knows the way. Backwards is not wrong, only different seeing. I followed the instructions. Sat on my bedroom floor for hours practicing. My fingers learned new movements. The fabric began to speak to me, and I mean that literally. Not words exactly, but communication. The way a shirt wanted to turn, the way pants preferred to twist. The secret language of textiles that only showed itself when you worked against the grain. My coworkers started noticing changes. Not bad changes, just differences. James, is that a new shirt? Sarah asked during lunch. No, same shirt, just folded different before I put it on. She squinted. It looks, I don't know, more interesting? Like designer or something? That's when I realized the backwards folding was changing how the clothes hung on my body. The seams created new lines. The fabric draped in ways that defied normal tailoring. I looked better, more put together, more designed. But the real change was in my dreams. I spent hours studying them, learning the logic, the way fabric wanted to move when you worked against its grain, the way seams could become design elements, the way a backwards fold was actually stronger, more stable. I started folding my own clothes that way. It felt wrong at first, like writing with my left hand, but gradually it became natural, meditative even. That's when the dreams started. I was in the laundry room, but it was bigger. Endless, rows and rows of dryers all running, all humming that tuneless song. And she was there, the fashion designer. I knew it was her even though I'd never seen her face. She was young, maybe late 20s, wearing all black. Her hands moved over fabric like a pianist over keys. You're learning, she said without looking up. Why backwards? I asked. She smiled, a sad smile, because that's how I see now, from the other side. The other side of what? But I always woke up before she answered. The dreams grew more elaborate each night. She showed me things, a dress that could only exist when folded. Unfolded, it was just fabric scraps, but folded backwards it became a masterpiece. Jeans that created optical illusions when worn. A jacket that seemed to have extra pockets that weren't there. Or were they? In one dream, she took me deeper into the laundry room maze. Past the dryers to a place where clothes hung in the air, folding and unfolding themselves in an endless dance. This is my studio now, she said, where I create. Create what? New ways of being. Fashion from the inside out. Clothes that wear you instead of the other way around. I watched a shirt fold itself into existence from nothing. Just air twisting and condensing until fabric appeared. How? The space between, she said. The fold is where dimensions meet. Inside becomes outside, becomes inside again. In that moment of transformation, anything is possible. I woke from that dream with my hands cramped into folding positions. My sheets were twisted into impossible knots that took 20 minutes to untangle. And on my nightstand was a business card I'd never seen before. Mara Chen Interdimensional Fashion Design, by appointment, only. The appointment date was 3 days away, at 3:33 a.m. The truth came out the way truth always does. Accidentally, horribly. 3 days passed. I didn't sleep the night of the appointment. At 3:30 a.m., I stood outside my laundry room, wearing my best backwards folded outfit. The fabric felt alive against my skin. Expectant. At 3:33 exactly, the dryer door swung open. Inside was darkness. Not the normal darkness of an empty drum, but the kind of darkness that had depth. Distance. I leaned closer and fell through. I tumbled through fabric space, through the insides of every piece of clothing that had ever been folded, through pockets and sleeves and the spaces between stitches. Colors blazed past me, the hidden colors that only exist on the inside of garments, the ones we never see. I landed in a room. No, not a room, a fold. A space created by the intersection of dimensions, shaped like a room because that's what my mind could understand. Mara was there. Solid this time, real, working at a table made of compressed fabric, designing things that shouldn't exist. "You came," she said without surprise. "Most people are too afraid." "What is this place?" "My workshop, my prison, my heaven." She held up a garment that seemed to shift between dress and suit and nothing at all. "When I died, I didn't cross over. I crossed through. Got caught in the fold between life and death. Between inside and outside. The dryer was my doorway. Every dryer is, if you know how to fold space correctly." She gestured around the impossible room. "I've been alone here for months, creating things no one will ever wear, folding reality into new shapes. But creation without purpose is just emptiness." She turned to me fully, and I could see the sadness etched into her features. "I need an apprentice, someone to learn the true art, someone to carry my designs back to the world." "What happened that night?" "Really?" She sighed. "I was working late, designing a dress that could only exist when worn backwards. The construction was so complex. I needed to see it in motion, so I put it in the dryer, set it to spin, and reached in to adjust a seam while it was moving." She held up her hands. I could see through them to the table below. The fold took me, pulled me through. My body was found 3 days later, compressed into an impossible shape. They said it was an accident. They were right, but also wrong. The fold wanted me, had been calling to me through every seam I'd ever sewn. And now it wants me? No. She smiled, and this time it wasn't sad. "Now I want you. You're the first person to understand, to see the beauty in the backwards, to learn the language of the fold." She showed me her workshop. Mannequins that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Fabric that remembered every shape it had ever been. Sewing machines that stitched with light and shadow. "But there's a catch," she said as we walked. "To truly learn, to truly create, you have to let go of forward thinking. You have to exist in the space between inside and out. You have to..." "Fold myself backwards," I finished. Yes, we stood there in the impossible space, surrounded by impossible clothes. The weight of the choice pressed down on me like heavy fabric. I was doing laundry on a Saturday afternoon. I'd gotten comfortable with the routine by then, when my phone rang. Sarah from work, asking about a report. I stepped out of the laundry room to grab my laptop from the living room, phone pressed to my ear. "Yeah, the Johnson numbers are in the shared folder. No, the other folder, the blue one." That's when I heard the scream. Not from the phone, from the laundry room. I dropped the phone, ran back, found my neighbor's kid, teenager, maybe 14, standing frozen by the dryer. The door was open, clothes were floating out, not falling, floating, drifting through the air like jellyfish folding and unfolding themselves. And in the middle of it all, she was there. Translucent, flickering, her hands moving through the clothes, through the air, through reality itself. The fashion designer, still folding, always folding. But this time was different. She wasn't alone. There were others, dozens of them. all translucent, all folding, all working in perfect synchronization. A factory of ghosts creating impossible garments from air and memory. The kid ran. I heard him screaming down the hallway, taking the stairs 3 at a time. I should have run too. Instead, I stepped closer. "Mara," I said. I don't know how I knew her name. "Mara, what happened to you?" She turned. For the first time, she looked at me directly. Her face was wrong. Not scary, just backwards, like someone had folded it inside out. "Got caught," she whispered. Voice like rustling fabric. Reached too deep. Dryer was running. Reached in to grab something. Sleeve got caught. I understood then. The new machines. Installed 6 months ago, 3 months after she disappeared. They found me 3 days later, she continued, hands still moving, still folding. Wrapped in my own laundry. Folded up like origami. Backwards. "I'm sorry," I said. Meant it. She tilted her head. "You learned, you understand now. The beauty of the reverse. The inside becoming outside, the hidden becoming seen. What do you want?" "To fold," she said simply. "To create, to make beautiful things from the wrong side of the world. But," she paused, flickered, stabilized. "But I'm tired, so tired, and you understand now. You could." "Could what?" "Take over, let me rest, I'll teach you everything. The perfect folds, the impossible patterns, the way to make fabric sing." I looked at her translucent hands, at the clothes still dancing in the air, at the backwards beauty of it all. What would happen to me? She smiled. That sad smile from my dreams. "You'd fold, forever, from the other side." The other ghosts had stopped working. They all watched me now, waiting. Some were old, their clothes from different eras. Some were young. All had the same look. Tired, but unable to stop creating. "There have been others before you," Mara said. "Other buildings, other machines. We're all connected through the fold. All of us who reached too deep, who loved fabric too much, who saw the possibility in the space between." She held out her hand. "Join us. Create with us. Design reality from the inside out." I reached out, then stopped. Because in that moment, I saw something else. Saw the trap of it. The endless folding. The eternal creation without purpose. The beautiful prison of the backwards world. "No," I said. "I'm sorry, but no." Her face fell. The other ghosts whispered among themselves, a sound like clothes rustling in wind. "Then you have to leave," she said. "Now. Tonight. And never come back. Because we can't stop. We'll keep folding. Keep creating. And eventually, you'll want to join us. They all do." I backed away. The floating clothes began to fall, drifting to the ground like dead leaves. The ghosts faded. Mara last of all, still folding until the very end. I moved out the next week. Broke the lease, paid the penalty, didn't care. Found a place in South Portland with a laundromat down the street. Normal place. Normal machines. Normal folds. But sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. with my hands moving. Folding invisible fabric. Turning things inside out. And I wonder, who lives in 4B now? Do they notice the folded laundry? Do they appreciate the backwards beauty? Do they leave notes? I drove by the building last week. Couldn't help myself. There was a moving truck outside. Young guy, probably fresh out of college, carrying boxes up the stairs. Excited about his new place. His perfect apartment with in-unit laundry. I almost warned him. Almost. But then I thought maybe he needs to learn too. Maybe we all need to see things backwards sometimes. Maybe that's how we understand what's really there. Or maybe I'm just trying to justify not saving him from what's coming. Because here's the thing, and this is why I'm telling you this story. I kept one piece, one shirt folded backwards hidden in my closet, and sometimes, late at night, I take it out. Study those impossible folds. Feel the fabric warm under my fingers, and I hear her humming. If you're still listening, if you made it this far, check your dryer right now. I'll wait. Did you check? Good. Now tell me. Was your laundry folded the way you left it? Or was it different? Backwards, maybe? Leave a comment. Let me know. Because I've been tracking things, and it's spreading. Other apartments, other buildings, other cities. Like she's teaching others. Like she's building a network of backwards folders, all working from the other side. And if you find clothes folded wrong, if you hear humming at 3 a.m., if you see pale hands in your dryer, don't try to learn. Don't leave notes, just run. Unless you're curious. Unless you want to see the world inside out. Unless you're tired of folding the same old way, then maybe you should pay attention. Maybe you should listen for the humming. Maybe you're exactly who she's looking for. Sweet dreams. And remember, check your laundry. Always check your laundry.